So a really common thing you're going to get in any reef aquarium is this light brown algae growing all over the bottom of the sand. So it usually starts off being a diatom algae, which is a unicellular algae that feeds pretty much on silicants, and silicates come from tap water. So if you use RO water instead of tap water, you'll usually get rid of the light brown algae. And various phosphate removers will also remove silicates. So reducing your silicate level, so reducing you adding them and reducing them that are in the tank, is going to help get rid of the light brown algae. Then the light brown algae will often give way to slime algae, which is basically cyanobacteria, and that's going to be pretty much phosphate based. So if you concentrate on lowering your phosphate levels, so that's using RO water and using phosphate removers, then over a period of time that will disappear. So the aim is to get the phosphate level to 0, or as close to 0 as possible, and then about 3 weeks after you manage to get it to 0, the algae will start to die, and then about 3 weeks after that it'll then die off. Now the other way that you can keep your sand white is by introducing sand gobies. You're going to dig in your sand all the time. Also snails like strom snails are going to help. Things like cucumbers are going to help. So anything that's going to muck around in the sand will help turn it over and help it keep nice and white. So it's basically a matter of sand gobies versus microorganisms, because if you don't have sand gobies, over a period of months and months, microorganisms will start to inhabit the sand, and those microorganisms become in the billions and billions, to the point where there's so many of them in there that they're turning the sand over themselves. But a lot of people just don't have the patience to establish the tank with microorganisms with technically live sand, so they'll just put sand gobies in. The other disadvantage with sand gobies is that they feed on the organisms in the gravel, and before you know it they run out of microorganisms, so they actually starve, so they get skinny and die, and they tend to do that within 6 months. If they last 12 months, that's pretty good. In a big tank which is heavily stocked with fish and lots of fish waste and lots of food, you can sustain them indefinitely, but in most people's circumstances they do not last longer than a year. Also, whenever you do a water change, make sure you're using a gravel cleaner. So the gravel cleaner is going to go into the gravel and suck all of the waste out of the gravel. Don't worry about losing microculture, because you are going to lose some microorganisms and so forth when you're doing the gravel clean, but it's nothing to worry about. They'll replenish themselves in no time, and most of the good ones are actually hanging on to the substrate anyway, so don't be too concerned about that. Now if it gets really, really bad and you do have a lot of red algae all over the bottom, the other thing you can consider doing, as well as regular water changes and as well as putting in phosphate removers, is to use products like anti-red, which can knock off the cyanobacteria, just to give you a good start to try and get back on top of your tank again. So there's some keeping your sand clean tips.